The KwaZulu-Natal Police Political Killings Task Team making a breakthrough over the weekend, charging two suspects with the murder of Xolani Ndlovu Ntumbela. Ndlovu Ntumbela was shot dead at his Mpomeni home in November 2022, with his murder allegedly linked to the illegal sale of land, which he had been trying to expose. His case forms part of the 121 dockets that were recently handed back to the KZN Political Killings Task Team. The two, already in custody for other charges, face counts of murder, conspiracy to commit murder and the illegal possession of firearms. Are expected to appear in the Howick Magistrates Court today.
The Political Killings Task Team detectives have charged two suspects for the murder of Xolani was killed in 2022 in November in Mpomeni, and that case was linked to the illegal sale of land which he was exposing. So for that he was killed, and two who were charged were already in custody. One is busy with bail application and other one was awaiting trial. And this case is one of the 121 dockets which were returned back to the task team in KwaZulu-Natal to investigate.
Earlier this morning, you saw confirmation that the police have now also arrested a traditional leader who's accused of killing two other people. Simphiwe Zuma charged with 3 murders after work by that KZN Political Killings Task Team. He was arrested over the weekend for the murder of a man in Howick 3 years ago. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu is a political analyst at Nelson Mandela University. Professor, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. We have seen so many political killings, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, over the years. We're starting to see more arrests now. How important is this arrest?
Thank you very much, Stephen, for having me, and good afternoon to your viewers. This is very refreshing, more especially because there's been a trust deficit between the people of South Africa and our police force. And now that we see the wheels grinding, then there will be a glimmer of hope that things will change for the better, which I think General Mkhwanazi should be credited for this, because following his media briefing, everyone seems to be reminding himself or herself what the original mandate was. In fact, the fact that these issues or these cases that we are referring to are also included in the 121 dockets, that is something that is they should be applauded, because some of us have been asking a very basic questions. Why did the files have to leave KZN in the first place? Now that they are back and then the investigations are underway, we are now seeing something positive. So this is something that should be applauded, Stephen.
We've seen many arrests in South Africa, but often not many convictions. How important is it, maybe not for the conviction, but for the actual proper court process? Let me put it another way. How important is it for us to actually see the accused in the dock answering questions under oath?
This is very important, Stephen. I think there are two things that are of critical importance here. One is that whoever is involved in making the arrest must make sure that evidence is not tainted. Because if you collect evidence and then you do something wrong, when you present that evidence in court, then it will be dismissed. So which means that whatever you have done will be a fruitless exercise. So I think that arrests on their own are not an end in themselves. It means that once the arrests have been made, you still have to ensure that the prosecution happens properly, and then ensure that whoever is the witness on the side of the police knows exactly what needs to be done. Evidence is presented and evidence is concrete, in which case then no judge will find it differently. So then the accused will then be found guilty if the evidence is properly presented. So everyone must come on board, not just one segment. Because if the arrest was done properly, but then the evidence is not convincing, then obviously the suspects will go scot-free and will be back to square one.
What we never really get is the hitman telling us who actually paid them. Do you think there's any chance of that actually happening? Someone standing up in court and saying, this is where the money came from?
Ideally, that is what all of us aspire to. You remember in the case of Cindy Somakaka that the person who has now been convicted for 25 years, in fact, implicated a lot of other people we were not aware of. But then what normally helps is if the person who turns a state witness is protected for status, and then that person divulges the information, so that at least we get to the bottom of who the ringleaders are. Because if you sketch the surface and only arrest those who are executing the plan, you are going to miss the point. The main idea should be to go straight to the bottom of the person or the people who are behind the whole incident. Then you stand a better chance of rooting out these kinds of activities. So it's only our guess that we will get to the bottom of who was responsible for orchestrating this whole thing, as opposed to just focusing on the executors of the plan.
So, as you say, there are so many things happening now, and you're exactly correct to say that because of what the Provincial Police Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, did, everyone is suddenly talking about this issue. Now we're going to have the Madlanga Commission, and that's going to investigate. We have Senator Mkhunu, who wanted this unit shut down. He's sort of on suspension. Do you think there's any hope that when this commission hears evidence, by the end of it, we'll actually know what's really driving the political violence in KwaZulu-Natal and who's responsible for it? I mean, a lot can happen in a commission and we don't always get what we think we need.
Stephen, I'll be honest with you, my brother. I can give you an ideal situation. I can present to you a real situation. The reality is that I, for one, I don't have confidence in this commission. In fact, as a matter of fact, I don't trust commissions because if you are a commission of inquiry, you are not necessarily a court of justice. Commissions are there to collect evidence and then compile a report and make recommendations, but they don't have prosecutorial powers. So which means that after having collected the information, they will still have to recommend those particular individuals to the relevant authorities who then have the mandate to execute whatever needs to be executed in law. Now, with the Madlanga Commission, there is something fishy about this whole thing. You might have heard that the acting Minister of Police, Professor Firoz Kachalia, was initially not happy with the decision taken by Masimula, who is the National Police Commissioner, to hand over the 121 dockets back to KwaZulu-Natal, 107 of which are murder cases. Then you ask yourself, what was in the acting minister's mind when in fact, he showed a reservation about this whole thing. So, which means, and they are saying that, by the way, these dockets must go to the Madlanga Commission. For what? Why were they removed from KwaZulu-Natal for starters? And why can't they be taken back to KwaZulu-Natal and then have those documents being attended to? If then the Madlanga Commission wants to have some information from those dockets, then copies can be made. I was happy when the spokesperson for the National Commissioner said that copies have now been made. They are in Pretoria, but the original documents are in KwaZulu-Natal, and already we are seeing the impact thereof, where arrests have been made. So I think that for me, if you were to ask me a direct question, Stephen, I will tell you that I don't have confidence in these commissions, not only because they don't have prosecutorial powers, but also because at the end of the commission, nothing happens. And then you find that the money that went to the commissions went to waste. Why not use that money to put more resources on the police and then make sure that they do thorough investigation and then make sure that the prosecutions are done properly?
I want to come at this another way, if I may. I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way, when I say that. We have, well, not now. I mean, I might later. If, say, we decided as South Africa, it's now 2025, by 2035 we were going to have stopped political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, what would we have to do? Now, some of it is obvious. We would need really good police work. We would need maybe a specialized court to investigate these things. We would need, I don't know, maybe investigators from other provinces, maybe even from other countries. But what in our politics would need to change?
Maybe the other element we left out, Steve, we might need sober judges.
Yeah.
Because if judges are not executing their job the way they should, then the work that the police officers embark upon will amount to nothing. You can make the arrest, present concrete evidence, and then if the judge decides to look the other way, either because of political interference or any other reason, then it means that your job will amount to nothing. This thought of bringing in other hands from elsewhere is not something bad, because then, as you and I know, that our justice system is supposed to be okay, at least on paper. But when it comes to executing our mandate, we are in some instances found wanting for one reason or the other. If, for example, there is suspicion that some of those who are supposed to bring perpetrators to book are also found to be having questionable characters, then the police force will lose credibility, the judiciary will lose credibility. When some of us raise those issues, then we are dubbed enemies of the state, which is not necessarily correct. Then if you bring in people from outside, let's say you bring Scotland Yard from the UK, or you bring the FBI, or you bring Interpol, whatever you do, if their mandate is not necessarily to overtake what we South Africans are supposed to do constitutionally, but they are there to complement what we are doing with one goal in mind, to make South Africa a safer country, then that will be a welcome approach, because then it means that we'll be bringing all those skills together. And in all probability, there will be more prosecutions than has been currently the case.
Professor Mngomezulu, really appreciate the time as always. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu is a political analyst at Nelson Mandela University.